Hey everybody, Chris Biddle from Light 23 here. Hey, I just wanted to show you this Creality Ender 3 3D printer that I just bought. I actually haven't assembled it yet, but that's what I want to provide this video log of, is my actually going through the steps of assembling it, and maybe you'll find it helpful for anybody else that wants to try to assemble this 3D printer. I have unpacked it from the box, so here's all the parts that I've sort of laid out. It was all packed really neatly in the box in some styrofoam packing. Got your power supply. I mean, everything is really straightforward as far as all the parts. Nothing really mysterious in there. You got a power supply. That's the going to be the display control panel. The motherboard and basically the brains of the 3D printer is down here at the bottom. One of the wonderful things about this is that the extruder head was already attached to the motherboard. So if you, this wire actually leads all the way down and is attached to the motherboard, so we don't have to worry about making that connection there. There's a lot of pre-assembly that's been already done. Good size print bed. I think it's 11 by 11, something like that. A pretty solid gantry system. I mean, these are all extruded aluminum framework. I noticed that all the stepper motors actually have limit switches on them, so we can be sure that none of the print work or the extruder is going to go beyond the range that it's supposed to. As far as tools, it actually came with this little spatula or putty knife, whatever you want to call it, that we can use to remove the print pieces when we're done. Wrench, Allen wrenches. It has all the tools that we need, as well as all the fittings, the fasteners. Looks like the instructions are pretty clear and very well illustrated. So I am definitely eager to start getting in and assembling this. It shouldn't take too long, hopefully. One more thing I thought I'd mention before I start actually assembling is the fact that these fasteners, as I unpacked them, I noticed that they all come in these little bags that are already labeled. So that means you don't have to struggle to try to match the fasteners to what's in the instruction sheet, to try to match them by size or look, because you can just look at the label and know where those fasteners go. That's a feature I don't find in a lot of kits. I also noticed that it has a lot more tools in there that aren't related to the assembly, but the actual 3D printing, which is really neat, like these flush cut snips. They come in really handy for kind of snipping the ends off the plastic that's been extruded from the extra plastic that's been extruded from the nozzle. Also another little item here that presumably will allow you to clean the extruder nozzle to unclog it, and you know, screwdrivers, things like that. So a lot more tools than I initially anticipated would be in the kit are here. So okay, on to the assembly. Okay, so I've completed step 1 through step 4, which basically entailed installing the ZAxis component of the gantry system. You can see these two vertical members here that I've attached. Process wasn't very complicated at all. It's just held by a couple of machine screws that come in from underneath. And also the stepper motor, to control the Z-axis movement. I installed that, and again, it was just a couple of machine screws. And the threaded rod that controls the movement, the vertical movement of the extruder head. So that was completed. The power supply attaches really easily with just a couple of screws in the front. And the control panel, same thing, just a couple screws in the front. So everything was pretty straightforward. One thing I do want to point out that's really important is on the back of the power supply. When I got it, it defaulted to the European 230 volts. So I actually had to flip it over to the 115 volt selection to use it here in the US. So keep that in mind if you do plan to run your 3D printer here in the US. Other than that, everything worked out great. So on to step 5 now. Okay, basically completed steps 5 through 8, which entailed building most of the X-axis component of the gantry system, so the part that actually runs horizontally across the top. So that's what this whole component is. It wasn't too complicated. Um, the only thing that might have gotten a little uh, tricky was passing the drive belt through underneath the extruder head assembly and then wrapping it around um, the uh, the X-axis stepper motor, uh, the axle there, and bringing it around here, and it's got a hook in underneath here on one side, and then it also slips in uh, on the other side here. The drive belt actually hooks up right there on the other side. So anyway, before you slip the drive belt around, you actually put this little end piece on there that that has the little pulley that holds the other end of the drive belt. So you just want to make sure that you don't over tighten these screws before putting the drive belt around. Um, Once you do that, then you can sort of loosen the screws again and push it out to tighten the drive belt. So anyway, that is pretty much the assembly there. I don't know what other issues I ran into. Really not too much. Pretty straightforward. All right, on to step 9, which will probably be attaching this to the top framework, hopefully. Okay, so here we are. Steps 9 through 12 completed, so that's pretty much the whole assembly. Those last 4 steps entailed basically taking the X-axis component of the gantry and slipping it over the top, and then taking the horizontal frame on the top and attaching that, and the spool, uh, uh, basically the filament holder, uh, attaching that, um, and making sure that when we do slip the this gantry over the top here, that it threads over this threaded rod. So basically, as you attach the gantry, you kind of turn this threaded rod to have it properly thread into that hole there. There's something in the instructions that say about not over tightening these screws, but they were already tight in the first place, so I just left that alone. And then basically we connected, made all the connections. All those wires were pretty clearly labeled, and the instructions made it fairly clear about where the ends of the terminals go onto the motors. And it's almost like, because of by virtue of the length of the wires, as well as the fact that they're labeled, it was almost impossible to not get it in the right place. So just make sure that you do get all the ends connected properly. It all makes sense. I mean, obviously this one here is labeled Z, right? And we know that this is the stepper motor for the Z movement. And this one here is the stepper motor for the Y movement. So the plugs that are labeled Y would obviously connect to that stepper motor. It would either be to the limit switch. In this case, this is the connection, the Y connection to the Y limit switch. And then the Y connection to the Y stepper motor is down here, and you can see it's labeled. So everything's labeled, and it's fairly intuitive how all the connections go. One thing that was a little bit confusing is on the back of the control panel, here, let me show you there. There were like 3 ports that we could connect to this one terminal to. But the instructions didn't explicitly say what port. Well, it did say EXP3 on the instructions. So it was kind of hard to see the label for EXP3, but this one here is EXP3. If you look underneath, you'll be able to see that it's labeled as EXP3. So that's the port that I hooked that terminal up to. And then obviously the power switch, the cord going to the power just plugs in there. So I am ready to power this up. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of adjustment and build plate leveling and that sort of thing before I can actually print something. So, but the assembly is complete. All right, so now that the 3D printer is fully assembled, I'm going to go ahead and power it up, and I just want to test just the basic motion, making sure that the stepper motors and the stop limit switches are working properly, that we got them connected right. So here's the power button. I'm going to power it up. And the first thing we're greeted with here is going to be a sort of a status window, I guess. Go ahead and push the jog button, and prepare, I believe, is the option that lets you control the motion. So let's go ahead or manually control the motion. So we hit move axis, hit the button, and let's try move X. So we'll move in 10mm increments. Okay, if I rotate it clockwise, it moves the extruder to the right, which makes sense. Then counterclockwise, moves to the left. All right. And then move Y. Well, we want to bring it forward, so counterclockwise, or I'm sorry, clockwise is in the positive Y direction, so that would bring the table toward us. And then counterclockwise in the negative Y direction, so that would move the table away. All right, and then we want to do a move Z. All right, again, let's just do 10mm increments. So if we rotate the knob clockwise, it'll move it in the positive Z direction, so this extruder, the gantry, should move upwards. All right, and then counterclockwise brings it down. And then let's do a quick auto home. Which will give us a quick way of testing to make sure that the stop limit switches are working properly. So again, under prepare, select auto home. All right, so we can see that the X stop limit switch was hit. The Z was hit. So we're all good there. All the stop limit switches were hit, and it homed in properly. So I think all our motion control has been connected properly, and we're good to go with some serious printing. That will be following in another video. So thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video, if you found it useful. And look forward to being able to put out another video for you with more work I've done on this printer. Take care. Thanks. Bye.